In this video, I will demonstrate the different ways you can sync vendor records in Spectrum with companies in your Procore directory. The integration between Procore and Spectrum as it relates to companies and vendors is a two-way integration. This means that vendors that have been created in Spectrum can be used to create new companies in Procore or link to existing records in the Procore directory. It also means that the information entered for companies created in Procore can be used to create new vendors in Spectrum. This is important because vendors must be synced between Spectrum and Procore before commitments assigned to that vendor can be sent to Spectrum. In this video, I will show you how this works in both directions. Here I am in Procore on the Portfolio tab at the company level. To add any vendors from QuickBooks into the Procore Company directory, I need to be logged into Procore as a user with at least standard level access to the ERP Integrations tab. I also need to have the ability to import vendor information from accounting. To get started, I'll need to navigate to the ERP Integrations tab. The first subtab that shows up under ERP Integrations is Vendors. When the Vendors subtab is accessed, the Ready to Import filter is displayed, and in it are any vendors from Spectrum that have not yet been synced with a company in the Procore directory. For each vendor listed, there are three options. The vendor can be linked to an existing Procore company, a new Procore company record can be created for this vendor, or the vendor can be archived. Let's look at each of these options in a bit more detail. The first option you will see for each vendor listed here is to link them to an existing company. This option is used to link a vendor in Spectrum to a company that already exists in the Procore directory. Maybe someone else has already added the information for this company into Procore, and rather than creating a new record in Procore, we just want to link it to the one that is already there. In that case, you can click on Link to Existing Company. The system will query the Procore Company directory, and if it finds a company with the same exact name as the vendor in Spectrum, it will pre-fill the name here. If it doesn't find an exact match, you can search for the company in Procore by entering the name here. In this case, the company name was entered into the Procore directory with the INC abbreviation at the end of the name, but that part was left off the name for the vendor when it was created in Spectrum, so it wasn't able to find the company for us as the names are not an exact match. However, we can still link them together if it is in fact the same company by selecting the name in the list. And now we just need to click the link button and it will sync this vendor with the company in Procore. So that is the option to use if the company exists in both Procore and in Spectrum. But if it's a new vendor that does not exist at all in Procore, you can create a new company and sync it to the vendor in Spectrum in a single click using the Add to Procore button. Let's use the next vendor here as an example. Like the last one, this is a vendor that was created in Spectrum, but in this case, there is not a company for it in Procore yet. You can see if I click the link to existing company, nothing pre-fills. Even if I start to spell out the company name, there are not any matches. So in this case, we just need to create a new company record. To do that, we simply need to click the Add to Procore button. And just like that, a company has been created in the Procore Company directory, and it is synced up with the vendor in Spectrum. The last option we have here is to archive the vendor. You should use this option if the vendor that is appearing is not one you will want to use on your commitments in Procore. For example, maybe it's a vendor you are no longer doing business with. Rather than leaving them here in the Ready to Import filter forever, go ahead and archive them. Archiving is your way of telling Procore to ignore this vendor. It does not have any impact whatsoever on the vendor information in Spectrum. It simply moves it from Ready to Import and places it under the Archived filter. If you've archived a vendor by mistake, you can go to the Archived filter and click Unarchive. This moves the vendor back to the Ready to Import filter. And now you can use the options to link to an existing company or add to Procore like before. So that covers the options you have to sync up Spectrum vendor records with Procore company records. But as I mentioned earlier in this lesson, this is a two-way integration. So now let's go through the process of using companies created in Procore to create new vendor records in Spectrum. To start, I will open the Procore directory tool, and I will click the Add Company button. Next, I need to enter the information for the company that I'm creating. And now I will click Create to add the company into the Procore directory. The company has now been added into the Procore company directory, but it is not synced with the vendor record in Spectrum. If this new company information should be used to create a new vendor in Spectrum, click the Send to ERP button in the top right corner. This makes the information available to be exported to Spectrum on the ERP Integrations tab, where it is now eligible to be exported to Spectrum. This action must be performed by someone at your company who has been designated as an accounting approver. In this case, I'm logged in as a user with this appropriate access, so I'll click on the ERP Integrations tab again. Now that I'm back in my Vendor sub-tab, this time I'll click on Ready to Export. On the Ready to Export filter, we see a list of the Procore companies that have been sent to ERP but have not yet been exported to Spectrum. As the accounting approver, I have the ability to either reject or accept and export it to Spectrum. If this is a duplicate vendor that already exists in Spectrum, or if some of the information is missing or inaccurate, you can choose to reject this company. When you select Reject, a comments area appears. In the comments, you can indicate why you're rejecting the entry. The person who clicked the Send to ERP button previously will receive an email letting them know that their company was rejected, and any comments you've entered will be included. So it's always a good idea to make sure and include your reasoning here so the person who sent it knows why it was rejected and what they need to do before resending it to ERP. On the other hand, if this is not a duplicate and the information is accurate, you can select the Accept button. Next, I'll select the vendor type that I want to assign to this vendor in Spectrum. After the vendor type is selected, I need to give this vendor an ID. This ID number will become the vendor code in Spectrum. And all we have to do now is click the Export button. This export is now being performed. When it's completed, you will see the success message to let you know the export was successful. The vendor will now appear in Spectrum, and in Procore, the vendor is now in the Synced filter. Here I am in my Spectrum site. If I want to make sure the vendor exported successfully, I can perform a search. After I perform a search, I now see that my vendor is in Spectrum. You can always tell which of your Procore companies are synced with the vendor record in Spectrum by opening the directory. Each company listed here that is displayed with the green ERP banner is synced with the vendor in Spectrum. The companies you see that do not display the green ERP banner are not synced with a company in Spectrum. Thanks for watching.